Hello everyone, we're back with the Acer Acros 486 desktop. We're going to be replacing the hard drive today and taking an in-depth look at the other internal components of this machine as well. Now, when I got this computer, I was unable to find any service literature on it whatsoever, pretty much. So I'm going to do like a quick guide right here to show you how to take one of these apart if you happen to own one of them, or at least how I have figured out how to take them apart. So what you want to do first is to take the cover off. There are a couple of tabs. Let me move the camera back here a little bit. Yeah, there are a couple of tabs under the case. So you'll want to just feel around. You'll be able to feel them, but then you want to press in on the bottom, and then the front panel comes off like that. And then you have two levers, one right here and one right here next to the 3.5-inch floppy drive. You want to kind of pull them out and then push the top cover forward to move them past those levers. This can be kind of a pain to do those, so remember, be patient. You don't want to get upset and accidentally damage the case, because this case is pretty much all plastic, so, well, there's thin metal, but most of the structural part of it is plastic. And then you can slide the top cover to the back side of the case and then lift it off. And from here, you will be able to access the internals of the computer. Now, if you would like to take this drive cage out, you will see that there are little tabs right here that sort of lock in. You'll have to take the entire drive cage, slide it forward to clear that little black, I guess it's like alcove or tab, and then you'll be able to lift the drive cage out. I will be honest with you, I am not a big fan of how this case was designed, but it's what we have to work with, so we'll just make the best of it. But what we want here is the hard drive. Now, I'm not sure if there are more screws that we need to take off, or if we'll actually need to take that drive cage out. I certainly hope not, but we'll give it a try and see if it works. When you're taking apart a computer, you always want to make sure that you use the right size bit for the job. Otherwise, you could damage the screw. You'll know when you have the right size when you're able to just mock it into the screw hole, and it'll like barely twist around at all. So this is the right size. We will put the other tool back and then put the bit in and unscrew it. I have no idea when the last time these were put in, so they can be a little bit tight. Now, does the drive lift out after that? Ooh, goody, it looks like it does. So we'll just pull this out, pull that out, and there is our hard drive. It looks like it is a Connor CP3017E, and this part is relatively important right here, because I do not think this computer... Actually, yes, it does have an auto-detect BIOS in it, so you'll want to just write these down in case you don't have them. Like, in case you don't have an auto-detect BIOS. This is probably the original drive of the machine, because of this date code, 9320, the 20th week of 1993. And to replace that drive will be this Maxtor drive. Now, this did work when I last tried powering it on, but we'll see if it works right now. The only thing that might cause some issues is that it's, I think, a 540 megabyte drive, and I'm not sure that this computer supports logical block addressing in the BIOS, so we might need to use a disk overlay utility to do that, but if we do, we will certainly take care of it. Now, getting this drive might be a bit of a challenge because actually it doesn't look like it was just hanging, so we might be able to just thread our screws in. Having a magnetic tipped screwdriver can be very handy for stuff like this, so put the screws in. Now, the reason we make sure we have the right size bit is if this is a little bit too small for the screws and you want to make sure they're in tight, you can strip the head off the screw and then it'll make it hard to get out. But of course you don't want to tighten it that much anyway, so you don't want to tighten them just crazy tight as can be. You just want to make them snug. Like, that's good. That's all you need. And then we'll want to hook up the cables. One other thing you should do that I forgot to do is check the jumper settings on the drive to make sure that they're set up correctly to put the drive either in single or master configuration, but I'm pretty confident that's how the drive was set up because I think the computer this was in was one where this was the only drive. And that's the replacement of the hard drive. Thankfully, easier than having to take the whole drive cage out. While we're here, let's take another in-depth look of the internals of the rest of the computer. So we have our 2 floppy drives and CD-ROM drives that I showed you in the initial video. But if we turn the machine around to its side here, we can see our expansion cards, including the Sound Blaster 16 SCSI model CT1770. This is a first generation Sound Blaster 16 with the SCSI host adapter on it for use with a SCSI CD-ROM drive. Now, I do not have a SCSI CD-ROM drive in this machine. It's IDE, but you would have, if you bought the sound card new, you usually got it in a sound card and CD-ROM drive kit. And what would happen is the adapter on the sound card would match the type of CD-ROM drive you got. So for example, if you got a kit with a Sony or Panasonic CD-ROM drive, you would have that interface on it. And if I had a lot of money and wanted to get a SCSI CD-ROM drive sound kit, I would get this sound card. So that's usually how it worked. We also have an Ethernet card down here. It's just a 3COM3C509. And then there were a couple of surprises I found with this computer. We found here that the video memory, which is just a Cirrus Logic video chip, nothing special, this machine has been upgraded to 1 megabyte of video memory, so you can display relatively high resolutions for what would have been a lower end DOS machine. The other surprise that I got, considering that this machine was marketed as a budget or a low-end machine, was that a couple of the ISA slots, well, they have another, what is that, an expansion slot at the end of it? Those brown, almost PCI-looking slots are VISA Local Bus slots, or VLB. So, what these were is they provided a direct memory pathway, I believe, to the 486 processor. So you could get much faster data transfer speeds over the expansion bus. This was absolutely crucial as expansion cards such as video cards became faster and needed faster data pathways to the processor that were faster than the standard old ISA expansion bus could provide. That is where Visa Local Bus came in. Now, this was only really seen on the on 486 era machines. You didn't see these in like 386s or Pentiums because they were very heavily dependent on the design and architecture of the 486 processor. Once you got into the Pentiums, you mainly saw PCI slots, and those, of course, went on to become the standard. And you can also find some 486 systems with PCI slots in them as well, but Visa Local Bus is relatively unique to the 486, so expansion cards such as video cards have become very collectible. In fact, they can go for several $100s, at least the ones that I have found on eBay. I don't know if you can get them cheaper elsewhere. We also have the 46 DX266. This computer originally came with a 46SS clocked at 25 megahertz, but I upgraded it, and then I threw this heatsink and fan combo on here because it's what I had. Now, as for whether or not this is needed or if it's overkill, there is some debate as to what you need to cool one of these. Some people will just run them bare and have the ceramic heat spreader act as the heatsink. Some people recommend adding a heatsink, and I just went with the whole package, heatsink and fan, because, well, that's what I had. But I'm not sure if it's necessary, but when in doubt, I would just add the heatsink, especially since these are older components. I mean, why take the risk, you know? This stuff isn't getting any cheaper, and you certainly can't buy it new anymore. I also went ahead and upgraded the RAM from 4 megabytes that was soldered onto the motherboard, and I added the 16 megabyte 72-pin SIM. Now, if those onboard RAM chips ever go bad, there is a jumper to deactivate them, but I'm not sure where that is on the motherboard right now. And I think it's obscured by the expansion cards anyway. You can't really see in here because of the mess of cables, but one thing that the seller did before I purchased the system was that they replaced the old evil soldered nickel cadmium rechargeable BIOS battery. If you find a 486 system and it still has one of those batteries on there, I cannot stress this enough. Remove it. Just either desolder it, like wiggle the battery back and forth until the solder joints finally give. I don't care what you have to do, just get that battery out of there because it has the potential to leak and destroy the traces on your motherboard, rendering it inoperable. I had this happen to a Packard Bell 386 that I had a long time ago, and we could not save it. Now, the previous owner of this computer knew what they were doing. They took out that battery and replaced it with the CR2032 holder. Now, on most of these, there is usually a jumper that you can use to make sure the battery does not charge, because you could damage the battery if you try to charge it. So that's what they did here, and I'm happy to report that in the 6 years of owning this computer, it has worked just fine. I have not had any issues with it glitching out, except for the video, but I'm not sure what that was. But thankfully, it works. It boots up, and I'm replacing the hard drive today. I'm not sure if the hard drive issues are related, but there are other age-related issues that you can find with these computers that are completely unrelated to the battery. We also have the power supply here, and I unfortunately think the label is right there. So we're going to have a hard time getting to that. So I think we'll just leave that for right now. But we'll put the top cover back on and power this machine up. To reassemble the machine, it's pretty much the reverse of disassembly. You'll put the top cover on until the two tabs here snap back into place, and then you'll put the front cover on. The front cover and all these other plastic parts can be a bit hard to get back on correctly nowadays, especially with how brittle this plastic has become in 30 years. You will want to be careful with that. So, thank you very much for watching, and next time we will power this machine on and probably get the disk overlay software working. The seller did include a diskette for that. And we will install DOS and probably the drivers as well. So stay tuned.